Okay, you're all set.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Chief Sonneban and Ann Spillane, Barnstable Police Department, here to talk about our proposed budget for next year with the CFAC. And we'll go through our PowerPoint here real quick.
Before you go any further, I think Lillian needs to do a roll call and make sure we have.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I realize you're enthusiastic to get us started, but we have to take care of all of this. We do. Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is April 24th. This meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable and will be available on Channel 18 at the end of the meeting. The agenda is on the town website. Chuck, if you would call the roll, please.
I will. Lillian?
Here.
Hector?
Hector's not here.
Okay. Wendy?
Wendy's not here.
All right. Jackie?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Neil?
Here.
And Chuck is here, so we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll go right into the budget with the police department. I see Ann and the chief. Welcome.
Well, hi. How is everybody?
Great. It's nice to see you guys.
Nice to be back again.
Okay.
All right. Here.
So it's all yours. Take it away.
All right. Well, here we go. And priorities and challenges for the Barnstable Police Department. Some of the big things that go into factoring our budget this year, as the last couple of years really, are police reform and some other challenges that we've identified. First and foremost among those are some state mandated requirements that have to do with accreditation and policy requirements, training requirements. So the state has also come out with several new mandates this year in the middle of the budget year that we had to deal with and are carrying forward into our future budgets. One of the big ones that impacts our operations, not just with the police officers, but also with our record staff, is that we are now required to interview all new firearms license applicants that come in here, and we can have a few hundred of those a year. So we have to find time to interview each person as they come in to file their new license applications and follow up on those to make sure they're properly being screened. That was something that was highly suggested in the past, but the law changed now. So that is now mandated by law that all departments have to do that. And we have been complying with that. We have been doing that, but it does add to some of the time as far as how long it takes to process applications, how long records clerks have to deal with different people and whatnot. Another big thing is accreditation and policy requirements. With police reform, the state mandated that all police officers individually have to be recertified every 3 years. Right now, we're going through our second round. So the second grouping of they divide the alphabet up into 3 segments. We're going through the second segment of the alphabet this year, or getting ready to. But not only they mandated that all individual officers be certified, they've mandated that all departments themselves be certified. They haven't set an actual date for that certification, and some of it they're still finalizing with the Mass Police Accreditation Council. But what it does require is the rewriting of a lot of policies and procedures to make sure everyone's conforming with all of the state standards. Before, it wasn't mandatory that you did. You could comply with CALEA, some different state nationwide organizations, but not necessarily the Massachusetts organizations themselves. But now the law has changed. So everyone has to comply with the Massachusetts regulations. So we've been working with an outside consultant over this past year to rewrite our whole manual, update all of our policies, which also requires forms and other things in dealing with that. Another big issue that we're dealing with right now is body cameras. We haven't come forward yet with a decision package for body cameras. What we are doing right now is we've had different vendors come in. We've met with them to see their products. Right now, we're working on doing a field test, or what one might call a pilot program. We have reworked some of our policies. The unions looked at them to take a look at them so we can have a draft policy in place, so we can start working with Motorola to maybe get some units in here to actually field test them and see how body cameras would go. And if they are what we're looking for and acceptable, then to go forward to like RFP processes and to sit down with the town and finalize some union negotiations and look at decision packages for the implementation of an actual body worn camera program sometime in the near future. Other big things that we've been impacted by over the last year with police reform are the number of Freedom of Information Act requests. We've seen a large increase in those, primarily dealing with our record staff and town legal having to deal with those. A lot of it centers around requests for disciplinary records, videos, and other things that the police reform law has mandated that we do. And we work with the police officer standards and training, or POST, to certify some of those things. So we've been getting a lot of requests for certification records and things like that. Some of that requires time of redaction and other things. So that's been an increase in staff time. Reporting requirements. We are now required to report certain things to POST into the state within a certain time frame. So that's been an additional drain on staff and records clerks and sworn staff to be able to pull all those records together, particularly around training and discipline. We have to now track them certain ways, report them certain ways, and provide them to POST within a certain amount of time. Also, as I mentioned, the recertification of each officer. Like I said, they've divided the alphabet up into 3 parts. We went through A through H last year. Now this year we're going through the middle part of the alphabet. Next year we'll go through the last part of the alphabet. Every 3 years, each officer gets recertified, but every year the department has to go through the recertification process for a certain portion of the alphabet. That requires interviews with each officer. They fill out questionnaires. We have to track all of their training, report it to the state. The officer themselves is responsible for making sure they're going to all the mandated trainings each year. So at the end of their 3-year period, they have to meet 90 hours of mandatory training to meet their recertification. So we have to track all that, and that's been a drain on staff. And as you can imagine, is increased also some of the requirements for training that we've had to do in order to meet the mandates by the state. Other big,
if I could ask you a question,
Sure.
Chief,
Sure.
Are you in need of more personnel, or have you had increases in overtime, or how have you compensated for that?
We're going to get right to that in the next slide.
Okay.
Right here.
All right.
So the next big hurdle we have is personnel. Quite bluntly, and you're asking the right question, really what you're seeing in a lot of other industries with staffing and being able to find people that want to work, or the right kind of people to work, is the challenge we're also facing here in the police department, not only with civilian staff, but in particular with sworn personnel. There's been a serious decline in not only the number of applicants, but the number of qualified applicants. We just finished we had the authority to go and fill up to 10 vacancies. We were able to pull a list. We pulled approximately 500 names from civil service. We ended up with 3, and those 3 are in the academy right now. We currently have 10 vacancies, which creates a big issue on the shifts. Right now, we're in a position where we mandate. It's been an increase on our overtime because we have to mandate people to work because there's not enough people. People aren't taking the overtime, so people get ordered to work. So we've seen an increase in the number of people being ordered to work. The other side of that coin is, even though the staffing is short, we are still mandated by police reform to meet certain trainings. So officers have to leave the shift to go to training, which also results in difficulties filling the shift to make sure people are backfilling while the officer is away doing the training. So it has seen an increase in the overtime. However, we've been managing our overtime pretty well this year, and we're not as high as we have been in past years. For some reason, we're just doing it really well. I like to claim a lot of credit. We're doing it really well this year, but I think we've also seen, in the past, we've seen some larger incidents. This year, we thankfully have avoided some of the larger incidents, larger call outs, more serious scenes where we have to call in multiple officers to deal with situations. So that really we haven't really seen that, knock on wood, that much this year. So I think that's led into a little bit of the decline in the overtime. However, we are having to hire a lot of overtime, but we are staying within the boundaries on that. But the big difficulties you can see here with looking at the slide is recruitment. First and foremost, we're a civil service police department. So we can't go out and just recruit people, throw an ad in the paper and attract people to come in here and fill out applications. Everybody we hire has to take the statewide civil service exam. They have it every year. They had it in the spring. Then they develop a list. The new list will be coming out probably in June is when the list usually comes out and is made available to us, and we can hire off of that. The only other people we can hire is people that are already hired as police officers in other jurisdictions, and they're called lateral transfers. So we can take someone from another jurisdiction as long as they're civil service, and we can hire them here. Over the last year, we have had luck in filling a few of the vacancies we've had with officers that want to come work here from other places, either on the Cape or other places in the state. However, that's becoming a little bit limited. We had an officer that was looking to transfer here from Hingham, but due to their own staffing issues, their chief wouldn't let him go. So we're running into that issue a little bit too. But you know, we're hiring when we can, but it still is, like I said, we have currently today, right now, 10 vacancies. And then we have like five people that are out on some injuries. We'll get some of those people back. But right now, so that's 15 people that aren't here at work. And then the 3 people that are in the academy, that translates into 18 people that aren't here at work right now. Because obviously people in the academy can't show up to work. And the big downside of that is you're paying people salaries to be in the academy, but they're not actually here working. They're going to be graduating here this summer, and then they'll be going through their field training period. We are currently going through a hiring process right now, trying to get some more people. And out of the 5 we were looking for that we had the authority to go for, we might end up with 2. And that academy starts in August. The big downside for us is that, like, unlike some other places, we can't just hire somebody and bring them in here and start them working unless they've already been to the academy. With the time that goes to the academy and field training, it's about 10 months to a year before they're actually here physically working. So that's the downside for us on the personnel issues. But personnel issues have become a big issue over the last couple of years, in particular since COVID. We've seen a real decline in the numbers of people applying to become police officers. The other thing that we're seeing is mental health related issues. You're starting to see, with the education that's going on out there, people have a lot more awareness now of mental health related issues in the workplace, like post-traumatic stress and things like that. So although we have robust programs here at the department where we screen, each officer gets a visit with a mental health clinician every year. We do provide services here. We have peer support teams. We provide counseling to people when they need it. The awareness is there. So we've seen a lot more. We've seen an increase in the number of people that are going out with mental health related injuries, post-traumatic stress and things like that. So it's not a huge number, but in past years, you wouldn't see anybody. And now you're starting to see increases, not just here in our department, but other departments are reporting that as well. Now that people are becoming more aware of what the effects of mental health related problems can be. Any questions?
I have a question, if that's okay. Betty
Sure.
Ledke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, the civil service piece. You say you're a civil service force. Is that by choice? Did you inherit that? What is the option if you were not civil service? What might that do to your opportunity to hire? What are the benefits of?
So civil service is something the department's been civil service. It was voted on. It was approved by council a long time ago. I don't know exactly what year, but you're talking way back when. I'm not even sure how far back, whether it was in the 60s, the 50s, or somewhere back then. But civil service is basically a program where you had to go through it's a state law that mandates how you hire, how you train, how you do all other kinds of things. And in order to prevent nepotism and for people from, just picking up whoever you wanted, hiring whoever you wanted to, and firing whoever you wanted to, it's supposed to provide some workplace protection. So you can get out of civil service. In fact, right now we're going through union negotiations. I've identified to the town one of the things I want to do is explore getting out of civil service, but it does require some union negotiations because it's a change in working conditions. It can be done, and it would require votes of the council and to go from there and then to officially come out of it. Once you're out of civil service, you can hold your own hiring processes. You can, Yarmouth is not civil service. They can advertise in the paper. They can hold their own tests. They don't even have to hold a test. They can just accept applications and they can have people come in. But the issue with getting out of civil service is it's a formalized process. You're in civil service by state law, so you have to come out.
Didn't Falmouth just come out of it? Didn't they vote to come out of it? Somebody, Falmouth, somebody?
Falmouth is coming out.
Thought...
There are a bunch of departments that have come out recently or are in the process of exploring how to come out. And generally it takes, it could take up to about a year to actually get it done. But one of the big things you got to do is you got to negotiate with the unions first because it is a change in working conditions.
Okay, so you are working, I mean, I would certainly as a town councilor support that. You're working towards that, Chief, correct? You're putting the pieces together, that proposal.
Correct.
Here's the second question. You talked about a lot of administrative tail. And I'm certainly familiar this with my job as an airline pilot. The training, the administrative tail is enormous to track everybody. It's beyond belief. Are you taking your qualified officers off shift to do this? Or are these purely administrative folks that are doing this? I certainly hope you're not taking your officers, off to have to do this tail.
No, we have officers. We do have an officer, a training sergeant that tracks the training programs and tracks all that. So that has been historically a sworn officer position, and we are staffed for that position. I haven't taken anybody off the road to fill that position, but it falls to each and every supervisor here in the department to properly track their people and file the reports and do whatever they do. In fact, falls to each individual officer to make sure that they are, hitting the marks that they're supposed to do and reporting and providing the proper documentation back to the department, and then we file it and keep track of it. The state has a tracking system. It's an electronic tracking system called a CADIS. We have to log into it. We have to, each and every officer has an identifier in there, and all their training and all their requirements goes right into that system. And then the state can look each individual officer up through there. It used to be a paper trail system in the past. Correct. File cabinets and everything. Everything's moved to an electronic system. And over the past couple of years since they initiated POST, what they've been doing is bringing the Municipal Police Training Committee, the MPTC, which provides all the training for the officers, and POST, they've been bringing them together through that ACADA system. So POST can track officers through the MPTC and how they're hitting their benchmarks and everything. It really begins with the new hire of an officer. Each and every new hire officer, we have to apply. Not only do they have to fill out an application with us, they have to fill out an application with POST. So POST can turn around, read the application from the officer and deny them a certification. And they might not deny their certification until they almost graduate from the academy. But once they deny them their certification, we can't hire them.
Oh, boy.
Now, does civil service have anything to do with any of this? This whole training, that whole is regardless of your status?
No. Civil service used to have to do with your hiring and discipline, but the police reform law is in effect cut them out of the discipline portion of it. And if POST decides you can no longer be a police officer, civil service has no recourse in that. They'll just decertify you and you can't be a police officer anymore.
All right. Okay, so, thank you.
And the other part of that, we do have civilian staff that also do work with record keeping and keeping track of different things as well. But it has been an increase in staffing requirements as well. So
thank you for that.
And are you able to find
we can move on now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
At this point, yes.
Yes.
All right. So training. One of the big issues with the police department here is every officer is required by state law to complete 40 hours of mandatory training every year. And that's basically called our in-service requirement. The state provides 24 hours of that training free. We access it online so officers can do it here at the station. They can be assigned a shift. If we have enough officers working, they pull them off a shift and they can go to these classes virtually, attend the classes at no additional cost. However, sometimes it does require overtime because if the shift is short, they still have to backfill somebody to replace that officer out on the road. and the officers can't miss the training. The virtual training is good because they have basically from the first part of September to the end of May to complete that training. So it's pretty flexible, but then there's 16 hours of additional training to make up the complete 40 that falls back on the departments. So we have to provide them with their defensive tactics training, their CPR training, and their firearms training. In order to do that, they do have to come off the shift because they clearly have to go to the range to shoot. They have to sit down in a class for 4 hours to do their CPR training, and then they have a class for 8 hours to do their defensive tactics. So that does require overtime to pay for those things. In addition, the state this year mandated we carry tasers, and when you first got your taser, you go through a class. It's a 2-day class on how to use your taser and the reporting requirements and everything, and that's been the standard for a long time. This year, in January, the state came out and said, well, now we're going to require that every single person that carries a taser must receive 4 additional hours of training every year and be recertified every year beginning right now. So that was an additional 4 hours of training that we had to come up with and provide for this year. We are completing that. Right now, the state is saying we don't have to do it 4 hours all at once. So we're trying to get it done and complete that by June so everyone will meet their requirements. Another additional training requirement is the state came out and said that each individual officer will now have to go through 4 additional hours of firearms training this year. So they want, effective right now, they want 2 qualifications every year. It used to be 1. Now they want 2, and they have to be at least 6 months apart. So now we have to go back and go out to the range again and do another 4 hours of training with each officer. Next year, they're also going to be requiring all officers must be trained and certified in all the weapons that the department carries. What we would do is not every officer would be trained and certified in their taser if they carried it. Every officer would be trained and certified in their sidearm or their pistol. And if they wanted to carry a rifle, they would be trained and qualified in that. And if they wanted to be certified in the use of a beanbag gun or a specialty item, then they would go through a class and do that. So not everybody went through it. There was only a certain percentage of officers that we trained on it. Now the state basically said that if you have a beanbag gun, every officer in your department has to be trained in it. So now that's an additional requirement because before we weren't having to do that. So now we're going to have to be doing that next year. And that's it right now for the additional training updates. We are being told, although it hasn't come out officially, that the state is also going to take the same approach as far as the OC spray that we have and batons and having officers recertified and additional training for each of those items as well. They have not come out and said that yet. We're just being told that, hey, this is coming, but no official word has come out yet.
Do you feel that this additional training is necessary, or is it onerous on the department? Is it going to improve safety at all?
It's going to be an increase. I honestly think it's a good thing. I think to give somebody a can of OC spray and train them once when they're a recruit, and then 15 years later, they've never had another retraining. We do training. Okay. We do training part of our training when we go to the range is officers use their tasers, they use their OC, and they do different things and different tasks. So it's not like we don't train them, but there was never any like additional certification requirements by the state. And now I think they're just with police reform, they're catching up with other segments of the country like California or whatever. They've been doing this for years. So they're catching up with everybody, making sure each officer is properly trained and certified, because not all departments were training people. They just weren't doing it. So I think they're just trying to make it close the loop and make sure everybody's getting the same training to the same standard for everything. In the end, I think it's a good thing. It's just got to figure out how they're going to do it. There's questions that we have that come up, and right now there's a lot of, well, we don't know yet, but we're trying to work with them to factor it out. But in the end, like I said, I think it'll be a good thing, to be honest with you.
Okay.
As far as how big of an impact it'll be, I can't say yet. And that's a lot of the problem. people ask us a lot of times, well, what impact is police reform we're going to have? We don't know, because last year we didn't know that they were going to come out with these additional requirements for the taser and for the firearms, but now they have. So now I can say, well, here's the impact. A lot of it is guesswork because they themselves haven't really come out and said, hey, this is what we're doing in the end. They're kind of, as the year goes by, they're coming out with different things. So.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments about the training portion?
I had one question. I'm sorry, Lillian. I'll be, where is your training range? What are the costs associated? Do you share it with other police departments?
Well, we used to have the West Barnstable range, and that's been closed down. So we rent Monument Beach Sportsman Club in Bourne on MacArthur Boulevard, and other departments are renting it. So we compete with other departments to get space. And whereas we used to go out to West Barnstable and didn't cost us anything to rent the space because it was available, we pay rental fees. So by having to go back out there again, we have to come up with another rental fee for the day or two or however many days it's going to take to train each officer to get out there. And then it requires, you know, the officer's gone, they're not in town, they're out of town, they're in Bourne for their full training requirement and travel time back and forth. So I mean, it's something we've been doing for a few years now since the range closed down. So as we've adapted to it, but you know, that's just the reality of the way it is.
And you closed the range for what? Why was the West Barnstable range closed? Why was the West Barnstable range closed?
Lead contaminant. That started out quite a few years ago as an insurance issue with the town.
Okay.
And it wasn't particularly our range in particular, but.
One last, you can't do anything with the Army out at the joint base?
We've tried, but their restrictions can be a bit onerous as far as getting out there. And we're required to do, we can't just do static shooting. We have to do moving and moving back and forth on the range. And some of their safety requirements can be a little bit restrictive as far as allowing us to do those things. And then getting in there, and then they have restrictions on what type of ammunition you can use, the times you can be out there and things like that. But we have in the past gone out there and done different things out there, but we haven't found it very helpful trying to do firearms qualifications out there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess we can move on to IT.
Yep. Information tech, IT. But honestly, the central nervous system of the department, it can't fail. You know, we are highly technology driven. Here we are on Zoom doing this meeting, but we have, you know, this is a 24/7, 365 operation. It's very technologically dependent. We have connections not only to the state, but the federal government as far as being able to do law enforcement searches, reporting, and different things. We have cameras around the building. We have numerous computers. There's computers in almost every police car. There's a lot. We're very technologically driven. A lot of records we have to keep, a lot of records that have to properly be recorded, saved. We have to meet different requirements, both federally and to the state, so our systems can't fail. Our servers have to be reliable. The stuff that we do record ends up having to be reportable to the court as well. So we have to be able to reliably store it and regurgitate it to the court and be able to provide it. Over the past few years, over the past few budget cycles, we've moved to, we used to have one person in here in the department that took care of our IT. Our IT got to the point where it was not very good. We made the move to an outside agency. We provide, it's the Oakers company. We pay them, they provide us with people. They come in and do all of our IT. We have a 24/7 help desk remote capability. So when we don't have somebody here in the building, we can access somebody 24/7 who can remote in and do work. If there's additional work that needs to be done, they send somebody down here to assist the IT person who is their employee on site down here with whatever work needs to be done. They assist us with putting the budgets together, identifying things that we need. They've been going through this year, rewiring a lot of the old wiring, updating a lot of our old systems, and our systems have become a lot more reliable since they have taken it over. And do you have anything to add? I don't know if she's here anymore.
I'm here. No, I don't really. I would have to say that I think that the outsourcing of the IT function has helped tremendously for the department to have a lot more consistent operations. And when there is a problem, we can readily address it. And we can also do probably a lot better budget projections in terms of I think we're doing a much better job figuring out what is going to be become obsolete or wear out, a few years down the road, so that we kind of have a plan moving forward all the time. And I think that helps a lot.
Well, I have a question for you, Anne. Do we have a multi-year contract with the vendor, or is it year to year?
It is. Well, part of it is year to year. We have managed services, which includes a person here 40 hours a week, every day on site. And then we have the 24-hour help desk. And that offers a cadre of specialists, depending on what the problem is, that can, solve things in the middle of the night if they're having a problem at 1 a.m. with something on our IT system. So that's negotiated annually. We also are in the process of entering into year 2 of a lease of equipment. When Okers first came in here, we had a lot of equipment that was really, really quite old, not functioning well. We needed to switch over from a virtual system back to a desktop system because with the type of police software we have, especially in the 911 center, the virtual system really did not work. So we've completed all that this year. And I'd have to say that we are not, we're really experiencing sort of a honeymoon period here where everything seems to be flowing pretty well. And so we're in year 2 of that lease program. It's a 3-year lease at $118,000 a year for 3 years to purchase equipment, and in the end, be upgraded.
So does the $302,000 cover all of the outside vendors, the 40-hour week and the other services that we have?
It does. It covers the individual here working full-time, and it covers the help desk and all the behind scenes, for them to come. And for example, they had to set up all the systems to be able to have a backup that is actually at Hyannis Fire Department of our computer system. So, that type of project is included in our fee.
Thank you.
It works out to around $25,000 a month. However, it depends on, they only charge us for the number of licenses that we're using. So it can vary slightly. That's the worst case scenario, is the $302,000 or $25,000 a month. It could be less than that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else have any questions about IT? Moving on to active grants then.
All right, so one of the other things that we do here is we actively get out there and we look for grants to leverage whatever we can to supplement our budget. Some of the things that we have done, the active grants that we do have right now going on from the federal, the burn grant, $38,740. The community block development grant from the town of Barnstable, $26,948. Emergency management performance grant, EMPG grant, $19,467. Mass Highway Municipal Road Safety Grant, $65,000. Jail Diversion Component Grant, $92,000. Jail Diversion Co-Response Grant, $99,000. Earmark for the clinician that we have out there, $60,000. We do have support and incentive grants, several grants from the 911 department to help provide our dispatch services. Support and incentive grant of $270,000, which basically pays the salaries and overtime of the dispatchers down there. We use that quite heavily throughout the year to cover a lot of the salary costs. The training grant to provide some training for the dispatchers, $22,743. In the EMD grant, because we are what they call primary public safety answering point, we do receive all the 911 calls in town of Barnstable. We do provide emergency medical dispatch. So that covers some of the training for that as well, and some of the associated things that go on with that, with $16,581. The Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant, $60,000. That's what it is this year. It varies a little bit from year to year, depending on how many officers need to get vests and whatnot. It's a 50-50 match. So we go out and we buy it, and the officers can supplement it a little bit, but then the state reimburses us, or the federal. It's a partnership between the Fed and the state. So we'll get $60,000 back to cover new bulletproof vests for officers every year. And do you have anything to add to any of those?
Not really. I mean, I think that the grants obviously help us tremendously in buying some equipment that is important. The burn grant this year, we bought some SWAT equipment. The community development block grant helps to fund the winter community service officer program. DMH jail diversion grant is a huge piece of what we're doing now on Main Street in Hyannis with people who have mental illness, who are diverted away from going to jail, and instead we work with various social service agencies to help them get resources to get them off the street and hopefully onto a better path. All the 911 grants really help tremendously. Let's see, emergency management performance grant. We use that money this year to purchase a new drone. So the grants are extremely helpful. We do have, the next slide, we do have 2 grants that our applications are in for. One is a COPS grant, COPS office grant, which is to help pay for 2 sworn officer positions if we get that grant. It's a highly competitive grant. And that the total value of hiring 2 police officers including benefits and all that, the whole value of the grant is around $600,000. The limit on the grant that we can apply for is $250,000. That grant application is in. And then we also have a grant application in for the planning stage of a regional communications center at $850,000.
The total on the active grants is about 600,000, did you say?
No, the total on the cost of the COPS grant, community-oriented policing grant, is around $600,000.
I see. Going back to the active grants, those 11
Yep.
that we had talked about earlier, it looked like it was about 600,000.
You know, I should have put a total at the bottom here, and I did not. But
I just eyeballed it. I don't.
Looks, I'm eyeballing it. I would agree with you, Lillian. I would agree with you.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's in
Next
that
year, I'll
ballpark.
put a total there.
Thank you.
All right, so and a little bit more on the regional communications center grant. This is actually the second stage of the grant. Last year we had a grant, or this year it just ended, a grant with the Collins Center to come down and do a study for us, Sandwich and Yarmouth, about the feasibility of constructing and staffing a joint 911 communication center for the 3 towns. So we've all agreed, right now we're all working together to go to the next phase, which would be to enter into some intermunicipal agreements to then look at the actual construction of a new facility. And the $850,000 is for the design and architectural process for actually doing that. Should we get that grant, we'll proceed into that for the next year. And then while that's going on, clearly start pulling things together to actually figure out the work on the next construction would be the construction grant for the preceding year, the following year, and then staffing up and bringing the center together. So that's what we're looking at right now.
That looks like something that's really needed too.
It is the state 911 department is really trying to push people towards regionalization for dispatch services. And we've had some success. A few years ago, we brought Hyannis Fire in together with us. We used to dispatch just the police. They used to dispatch just the fire. But over the last few years, we brought everything together here. So we dispatch police and fire out of here. It's been highly successful. We've seen a reduction in call response times for the fire departments. We also receive all of the cellular calls in the town. So there's been a real improvement in services, and the move to professional dispatchers to handle the calls instead of just putting police officers in there, freed police officers up to do other tasks. But you're also getting a more consistent product by having trained people that are actually, and that's their job function to do that job. So we're looking to carry that over. And right now, Yarmouth and Sandwich are both interested in coming in with us. And right now, we're looking at the center would be in the town of Barnstable somewhere, and hopefully probably somewhere around the police station. But right now, it's still in the early stages, and we got to get through the design phase, and everything else still needs to be pulled together yet.
Thank you. Any other comments about the grants or the?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask again, definition of regional. You'd said maybe Sandwich and Yarmouth. What do they define as regional? How far would a region go to be realistic?
More than one town.
Okay.
The state defines it as more than one town, yeah.
Okay.
As long as, because like we tried looking at it because we have 5 different fire districts. We tried talking to them about would it be regional if we pulled all the fire districts and had one dispatching center, one public safety dispatching center for the town of Barnstable. And they said, no, it doesn't count for that. What they look at is for the state, all that matters to them is the number of what they call PSAPs, which we are one, how many of those they can bring together. And right now they're encouraging, at least 2 to get together, but you can go in different places in the state and they brought more than that together in different circumstances. This project here, right now we're looking at 3. However, it would be expandable to go larger than that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Move on to funding.
All right, funding. So some of the recommended requests that we put in for this year, vehicles. Vehicles have been a huge problem over the last, as anyone knows, been trying to buy a car here recently, it can be difficult to find a car. It's even more difficult to try and find a police car. Let me tell you, we've been going through we've gone as far as New York, Long Island, New York, to try and find police cars over the past couple of years. A lot of deals have fallen through. It's been very shaky as to whether you're actually going to see cars. It's been over a year since we've actually gotten any new cars because they just have not been available, either chip shortages, manufacturing problems, or whatever was going to come through. We had orders that we were told were going to get filled, and then they just canceled them and they didn't even show up. So last year's vehicles that we had ordered didn't even get them. We're using the money from last year that had been encumbered to currently buy some new vehicles now. So we do have some vehicles that will be coming in shortly. But the problem with that is, like everything else, the cost of vehicles is significantly increased. Right now, we have been funded last year $500,000 for vehicles. Right now, we're looking for $577,500 to cover the increase in costs. We are looking at a cost of a basic patrol car right around in the area of $70,000 per vehicle for a fully equipped police vehicle. The other big thing is there's been a change in state law that we discovered this year. There's been some just changes in right now, like to get a police car painted, there's been a threefold increase in the cost of even getting a vehicle painted. We used to pay for what they call the single coat paint. The law changed, so now you have to triple coat all the paint costs. So the cost of even painting a vehicle have gone up 3 times. So it's about $1,800 to paint any vehicle now. Costs have gone through the roof. IT managed services, we're looking at $433,318 to manage, provide for our managed IT services, maintenance contract for email filtering, inventory systems, and year 2 of our lease to own program of replacing the obsolete equipment in the building. Training, $287,885. This would fund in-service training, firearms training and qualifications, TASER recertifications, school resource officer certifications. Another change, which I failed to mention earlier, school resource officers now have to be certified, and their certification process is they have to go to this conference every year, so we have to send them. Traffic crash and traffic homicide reconstruction training, and field training officers to train new field training officers, and to send a few officers down to the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference and to receive additional training and supervisory training. And overtime budget increase as our salaries go up through contract negotiations. This is just an increase of the OT budget in order to keep pace with contractual pay increases.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the vehicles, are you required to replace those after so many years, or does the department determine based on maintenance costs to replace them?
Well, generally we try and replace vehicles before they get too high mileage. Right now, we put about 40,000 miles a year on a car, but in addition to the miles that you're putting on the vehicle, you're also putting on engine run times, because a lot of times the vehicles sit idle, so the actual number of hours on the engine are higher than the number of miles on the vehicle. We try and get vehicles out of here before they hit 150, 160,000 miles. But in years past, we've had vehicles going over 180,000 miles in order to provide for the fleet out there. What we have done that we were not doing in the past is, as we get some vehicles that start approaching the higher mileage, we rotate them out to units within the department, like the school resource officers or the community impact unit, that don't drive as many miles. So the newer vehicles go down to the line fleet. So the officers responding to emergency calls have the most reliable vehicles. And then the vehicles that get a little bit older, have a few more miles on them, they get rotated out to units that aren't necessarily primarily responsible for emergency response, or their vehicles don't have to have the newest vehicle. They can have the older vehicle. So it extends the life of the vehicles. Then we also have vehicles that we rotate out to the detail fleet. So officers that are out on details would have, like, particularly now around the sewer construction projects and road closures and everything else, you find that you're going to need a lot of police cars just to be out there. So instead of shorting the shifts and not having enough cars for the shifts, we got to have vehicles that are out there for officers to take for road closures, or for at night, if a pole's down, to have a pole down to provide for the safety of the workers and everything else. So it's not just vehicles that you need to have on hand for the line shifts that are out there driving around every day, but there are ancillary things that we have to provide for the vehicles for. The other thing we've seen is, depending, I'm sure like everybody else has, depending on the model year of car you get, kind of dictates on how reliable that car is. We've actually seen that some of the vehicles we bought in 2021 had some, was it 2021, Ann?
I think it was 2020.
Yeah, 2020 had a significant number of problems. The vehicles before them and the vehicles after them were not requiring as much maintenance as those vehicles. So we're trying to rotate those vehicles out a little bit quicker. So yes, sometimes it's just the model year that results in a lot more higher maintenance, which also has increased some of the costs that we've had here. We've also seen increases in what it costs to buy brake pads, to get oil, to get other things, and the reliability of even being able to get those parts to repair the vehicles. We're lucky because we have 2 full-time mechanics here that work in the department, and they tend to a lot of the repairs that we need. So we're pretty self-sufficient, but there have been cost increase in that area as well.
So I just wanted to add in, that, so that money would buy us 6 patrol vehicles, 1 unmarked supervisor vehicle, all in the form of Chevy Tahoe. We have to get out of the Ford Explorer mode and go to Chevy Tahoes because Ford just can't deliver those cars any longer. And we're also exploring for the first time buying some used vehicles for the detectives unit.
On
Which
average, how many vehicles do you buy a year, or do you plan to buy in a year?
it's usually it's usually around 7, I'd say.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Thank you.
7 to 10, 7 to 10, depending on the cost of the individual vehicles and what we have.
These are all the patrol vehicles were estimating a cost of $78,840 a piece. And so that's why we're starting to look at used vehicles. If we can find some Hyundai Santa Fe's that have 10-year warranties on them, that might be a very good option for us. And we can buy them used. That might work well for us.
Thank you.
When you get rid of the vehicles, do you get monies for them? Do you sell them at a cost?
We do get trade-in values. The trade-in values can be a little limited depending on how the condition of the vehicle that you're trading in, but we do trade in the vehicles to the people that we're buying the new vehicles from, and some of the equipment that's on the vehicles we do try and swap out whenever possible, but a lot of that stuff is gone by the wayside these days. They don't design things to last as long anymore, it appears. And then what they do is they change the design of the vehicles just enough every couple of years so that you get stuck having to get like a new prisoner transport cage because the one you had 4 years ago doesn't fit anymore. The light bars don't work anymore. You know, they're trying to make their money their way too, which is, you know, their redesigns.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, we can move to your proposed budget.
Proposed budget. So personnel budget, $15,064,532. Operating budget of $1,336,540. An operating capital of $696,448 for a total proposed FY24 budget of $17,097,520, which is a 3.09% increase from FY23.
I'm astounded by the operating budget relative to the personnel. Yeah. Chris, you got any questions?
You had mentioned school resource officers. Are you having any trouble with that part of the department as far as do you have officers at every school in the town?
We do not have, well, what we do is we have 3 full-time school resource officers right now. We have 2 in the high school. We have a sergeant and a patrol officer in the high school full-time. And we have 1 officer full-time in the Barnstable Intermediate School on 28. We used to have an officer full-time over at Barnstable United. However, when COVID hit and there were some budget rollbacks, that officer got pulled out, rotated back to the line, and that position was never refilled due to staffing issues. What we're looking at doing right now with the COPS grant is to use one of those positions to replace and put somebody back into the Barnstable United Elementary School. So we'll have a 4th full-time officer there. What we also do is we have school resource officers that are part-time workers that we call adopt-a-school officers. They go into the elementary. So each elementary school and every other school that does not have a full-time school resource officer has what we call an adopt-a-school officer who goes into that school for several hours a month, meets with the kids, maybe has lunch, does a program, goes there after school, coordinates with the staff. If there's any issues at that school, they have a point of contact directly here at the police department that they can get in touch with. If there's issues there at the school involving students, if something happens outside of school, that officer gets involved and can be a liaison back and forth to the school. So although they don't have a full-time person assigned to the school, we do have part-time people that do work with the schools and are familiar with the staff, and the staff are familiar with them. And we've been doing that for several years.
With the various shootings around the country and at schools, do we have enough security?
That's a good question. I mean, unfortunately, you never really know until something happens. But what we did is last year, our training supervisor put together a plan, and we just actually had the training on April 17th. We brought all of the town fire departments and the school department together and had one big training event. It was not only just drills, but also actual instruction on how to do certain things, how to deal with an active shooter program response and all that other stuff, to coordinate with all the fire departments and the school departments and the police department on one day and get all this training done. We've been doing that for several years, but this was the first time that every single fire department in town was actually brought together with the police department to do it all at once. And as you can imagine, it's a rather large ordeal to bring people in.
It really is.
From every public safety agency and start doing it. You had to get a lot of outside support and a lot of other people to come in and do it. We've done smaller scale drills like that. We've done them at the mall. We've done them in different places. The state does provide different grants for the schools to take advantage of to increase safety. We've assisted the schools with applying for some of those. They've gotten some of them in the past. Right now they're applying for one right now, I believe. And we've been assisting with them trying to get that. But, you do the best you can. You got to keep your eyes open all the time. You got to be communicating all the time. And, a lot of these different scenarios, people get into school because somebody left a door propped open or did something, and it was just a failure that day that somebody took advantage of. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but if you get someone who's really determined to do something bad, they're going to find a way. And you just got to be as prepared as you can be. And that's where training comes in. Training is very important, but it's not just the responsibility of the police department, the fire departments, the schools. Everybody has to train together to be able to work together when something happens.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the update of the requirements and the operations. And we really appreciate your giving us and letting us ask you questions and during this discussion. Chief and Ann, thanks so much for taking the time to come with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we can now move on to DPW. I think I saw Dan Santos earlier. Is he queued up?
Yes, hello.
There you go. Hi. Thank you for coming.
Sure. How's everyone doing tonight?
Very well.
So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but we can go through the various budgets, mostly changes, and talk about some of the challenges and concerns and issues that affect our budgets significantly, at least this year, the past couple of years anyway. A lot of them are similar, and we continue to see them making changes and requiring additional funds for the most part. So start with our water supply division. We have 3 enterprise accounts, water supply division being one. The water supply division is primarily operated by a contractor. We have contract services. We've had that since we started the water supply division, when we purchased the assets of the former Barnstable Water Company in 2005. Which was really just in the nick of time because the system was in pretty bad shape, and we've spent the last 18 years, and we will continue to update and upgrade that system. And that division is overseen by an advisory board called the Hyannis Water Board, and they meet monthly. And they review all of the budgets and revenues, as well as the capital budget, and make recommendations to the town manager and the town council relative to those items. So really, The only change, so all of our budgets throughout town, we operate on a level funded budget system with changes on top of that, either plus or minus, typically plus. Things don't usually get cheaper. So Veolia is the company that is our management and operations contractor. And so our biggest change every year is the increase to their contract, which is based on an escalator clause in the contract based on a number of factors, one of which is CPI, and there's a calculation. And so this year that increase is about $266,000.
Right.
And the only other change is we are increasing our administrative assistant. We have two employees from the town that manage the system. Hans Kaiser is the supervisor, who's been the supervisor since 2005. And he has an administrative assistant who has been working 30 hours. And we have requested that move to full-time employment, basically 5 full days, just as a result of the requirements and additional needs in the office. That's over the past few years, it's been hard to get everything done in 30 hours. So those are the changes in the water supply division.
Before you go on, Dan, there's an increase in the debt service for next year.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at $111,000.
Yeah, I will. I'll let Mark Milne address that.
Okay.
If you want to know specifically what that is, but you know, our capital program every year usually results in some borrowing, and so our debt service gets retired and increased and changes from year to year.
Thank you.
Yes, Lillian, to answer that question, we did, as part of our bond issue in March of 2023 this year, we had 2 water projects that were included in that issuance. So we have some new loans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, sorry. Next.
Any questions on the water supply?
No. Anybody have any other questions on water supply? Nope.
Nope.
Okay, we'll move on to the water pollution control division, where we have, that is one enterprise account that has an operating capital of $100,000, and that basically covers the cost of capital equipment throughout the year, you know, pumps, valves, things that fail and need to be replaced. That, while it does occur every year, we request it as we do with other OPCAP. It's not an automatic renewal. And so that's $100,000. Most of the increases, if actually just about all in all divisions, are non-discretionary. There's very little discretionary increases this year in our budget, and most of which is addressing the cost of things that we have to do that has gone up. So in water pollution control division, utility and fuel adjustments, that's water primarily, gas and diesel. And so that's going up $34,440. We've increased the fund for repairs and maintenance and the operations there by $33,000. Sludge disposal is a very significant cost in our operation, and we get rid of sludge, which is the byproduct of our process. And the way that's disposed of is it's hauled via tanker truck to a incinerator in Rhode Island. And we've been doing that for a number of years. And that is really the best option available to us right now. And those costs have gone up significantly, primarily in the trucking, getting that material moved. And this year, we've asked for a $300,000 increase in that line item.
For the sludge?
For sludge disposal.
Okay.
And that just reflects the cost of the contract to have that removed. We have looked over the years hard at the process and what our sludge looks like, and we have settled on that as the most efficient and effective process for our wastewater treatment in Barnstable, which results in having to dispose of sludge. Right now, there are not a lot of options, particularly with PFAS on the scene now, and PFAS is making some disposal options, because in some places they do land disposal and composting. Now with PFAS, that really is not a great idea, because you're putting PFAS on your land, and with the incineration process that we use, it destroys the PFAS. So we think that was probably the best approach. Chemicals, cost of chemicals have going up, very chemical intensive processes, wastewater treatment plant, as well as water supply, $60,000 increase. And then funding for plant equipment, a $10,000 increase there, just based on what we've been spending over the years to keep parts and things that we need to replace throughout our process system, as well as our pump stations. And we also have the remote treatment plant at the Marston's Mills School, and the Red Lily Pond septic system that we operate for the number of homes there in that area, which ultimately will be replaced by the sewer system, as will the Marston's Mills School. The Marston's Mills, it's behind the elementary school there. That treatment plant is going to be turned into a pump station. It has basically gotten to it's the end of its useful life, so we would have to reinvest significant capital to retool that plant, and it became more economical to turn that into a pump station. We could deal with more homes and residences in the Marston's Mills area and pump that back to the primary treatment plant here in Hyannis. That addresses the water pollution control. Are there any questions there?
Before you move on, could you address the incorporation of the CWMP operating budget into the water pollution control budget?
And you want me to take that?
I think that was a decision that Mark made as the finance director. I'll let him address that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what we did is it's change in accounting, because the comprehensive wastewater management plan is a plan to build out our public sewer infrastructure system, which is all part of, when you think about it, our sewer enterprise fund operation. So we wanted to show the total picture of what that operation is going to look like on an annual basis, including the expansion of the public sewer system. The costs associated, however, we're tracking the costs separately for the operation of the facilities that we have and the construction of the sewer expansion program. And the reason why we track those costs separately is because they are being paid for with different funding sources. User rates pay for the existing treatment and disposal, collections, treatment and disposal of the existing system, whereby the CWMP, or the expansion of the public sewer system, is paid from other sources, which include hotel and motel room taxes, short-term rental taxes, general fund support, sewer assessments, and so forth. So we consolidated the budgets to show the full picture, but we're tracking the costs separately so that we can identify the funding sources separately as well. Give you a whole picture of what this operation looks like. And it is now become our largest enterprise fund operation as a result of that.
Sure. Well, last year when we started the CWMP operating budget, it was around $3 million. So if we add that to the WPC, it will indeed make it the biggest enterprise operation, right?
Eventually it will. I think the airport still is slightly larger.
Yeah.
But probably by next year it will.
So how will we deal with it? Will we deal with it as water pollution control with a subsection for the CWMP?
Yes, you'll see in the schedules that we present, there will be separation of costs between operations and the CWMP.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And can I ask one thing? It just, when Dan brought up about the sludge and the concern with the PFAS, wouldn't the same thing apply to the effluent? Is there anything in the budget in the near term to do that filtering? You know, we filter at all of the wells. Is there something in the budget, Dan, in the near future to filter the PFAS from the effluent? You know, not just take care of it in the sludge aspect. Just curious, when you brought that up, it just came to mind.
It's not currently in the budget. We have a design beginning to expand and modify the plant. And as part of that, we're going to provide the opportunity to accommodate PFAS treatment in the future. But what we're waiting for basically is for the state Department of Environmental Protection to issue regulations and requirements for what they're going to be looking for relative to PFAS in wastewater treatment plants and what level of treatment they're going to expect and require. And once we know that, then we can start thinking about how to incorporate technology into our existing plant to address it.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
I noticed a dramatic rise in the pension for this year over last year. Are you anticipating retirements? Are you going to have staffing shortages or?
I'll take that one, Dan. Yeah, what that is, Chris, is we have a number of new additional personnel that have been brought on board to help with the implementation of the CWMP. All those employees are part of the Barnstable County retirement system. So there is an increased cost. It's almost doubling the staff of this operation. When you CWMP staff, in addition to the operations staff, it's almost doubling of the staff.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to solid waste.
Okay, and solid waste division. You know, really it is the non-discretionary items there. We're increasing disposal cost. That is basically the escalator 2.5% on our contract with the disposal contractor, which was formerly New Bedford Waste, and they've been bought out, and I'm blanking on the new company, but that's just the additional cost for our solid waste that considered trash, basically the non-recyclables. So there's an increase in diesel fuel and electricity just because the cost of those have gone up, and we're just incorporating those into the budget. Overtime is increasing by $12,000. We run a 7-day operation, and we've just found that to be able to cover vacations, illnesses, staff shortages, that we need some additional funds in our overtime. And then we're increasing our parts and accessories line item by $3,000. That's just buying parts for vehicles and equipment at the operation. And over the past few years, we'll find that we've been spending more than in the budget. So it's necessary to propose raising that. You know, the biggest operating cost expense non-personnel at the solid waste division is disposing of solid waste, disposing of trash that goes into the if you're familiar with the operation, when you first go in, you throw your bagged trash into the compactors, and then that gets hauled off. and basically either landfilled, and we don't have really a say in that. It's the disposal contractor. It's either landfilled, which is becoming less of an option as Massachusetts keeps closing landfills. I think they have a serious issue in the future relative to this because, you know, they don't permit incinerators. Like we used to send our waste through to Rochester with Covanta, and it was in the waste or energy plant. This contract since 2015 is either landfilled in Massachusetts or it's hauled out of state to other state landfill operations. And that's a very significant cost in our operation. So in the past, the more you could recycle and keep recyclables out of the waste, the better, because recyclables either paid you get revenue, or they were less costly to dispose of. And that changed a few years ago with the whole issue of China not taking recyclables from the US and creating havoc in the recycling markets. Now they've started to come back, but it was costing us as much to get rid of recyclables like glass and plastic as it was solid waste. So communities that had pay-as-you-throw, which drives material to recyclables, was really causing a problem with those communities. Now, we looked at that in the past. We never went to pay-as-you-throw.
Right.
Doesn't mean we won't in the future. Just it's very dependent on the recyclable market. And so right now, we're getting money for metal as a revenue generator for us. Metal's tin, scrap metal, which is good. And cardboard, corrugated cardboard, and newspaper to some extent. And so we monitor this weekly, and we vary how we dispose of recyclables to make sure that we're getting money where we can. And when we can't, paying as little as possible for the disposal. But the big move of late, and the Energy and Infrastructure Committee for the town has been working with us on food waste disposal and increasing the amount of food waste that we remove from our trash and dispose of through compost operation with a vendor. And we've had some success in improving that. And we will continue to do that because there's some estimates show that 40% of the solid waste or the trash is actually compostable, mostly food waste. So if we can remove that from that waste stream, that can reduce that line item significantly. So we will continue to work with that committee to increase that to hopefully save some money in the future.
Have we ever looked into the food dehydrator that takes food waste and converts it into almost a soil supplement within 24 hours? I think it's.
I've seen them on the small scale, but I haven't seen it on the large scale. But we haven't. But if that is something that's an alternative, then we certainly will. I know Councilor Starr is on the Zoom. He may have some information on that. I know he's passionate about this. So
yeah.
No, okay. It's happening at the moment at the high school. The high school has a dehydrator, so they sort their food waste and put it through a dehydrator and make a product that gets sold. It's there's a club, the Challenger Club, and they also have one at the I think it's the Osterville Elementary School. So there are a couple little ones, but like Mr. Santos said, they're not. I've never seen them any large scale.
I see.
Possibility. There are some possibilities at the County Extension Service is looking at maybe setting up regional composting areas where which towns could hook into, but that's just a thought out there at the moment.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions about the solid waste or comments?
Nope.
Okay. Dan, got any other comments?
So we run the HYCC facility, not the programming, but the facility. We took that over
Right.
in the past probably 6 or 7 years ago. And relative to that budget, we have increased our operating capital by $15,000 to $90,000 this year. We're finding that with that building and facility is very equipment intensive, particularly for air handling, air conditioning, heat, but also the generation and maintenance of 2 ice sheets. And there's an ammonia system there that is very maintenance intensive. And so we're finding that to replace parts and equipment and pumps and compressors, you know, we need additional funding there. So we sought $90,000 total. We've asked for a new full-time custodian. We are basically consolidating temporary employees into a full-time. It's very difficult to find part-time, temporary, or seasonal employees. And so we'll give up some of those, turn that into a full-time custodian that will help with maintenance of the facility as well as running the Zamboni. That's something when during the ice season, that's basically going from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. So extensive personnel involvement, keeping that ice sheet going. We've increased preventive maintenance agreements by $8,300. That's primarily addressing our ammonia system. There's a lot of components, and it's something that we have to be 100% on top of. Ammonia is very dangerous and can be a real safety issue. So we want to make sure that system is maintained in top-notch fashion. And then I mentioned the OpCap. So just those few changes in the HYCC operation. And then there are capital projects, as you've heard about, in that we are been involved with over the past few years, and will continue to basically replace a lot of those failing systems to make this real top-notch facility operating, you know, at peak efficiency, and we'll continue in that direction.
Any questions about the HYCC? Does DPW work with golf at all?
We do. We help them out with their facilities when they need design done or some maintenance advice, capital projects. We design and oversee and manage for them.
Thank you.
And so, so finally would be our general fund budget. And in that case, we have a number of changes similar to the other enterprise funds, non-discretionary items and important items. I'll go over those. It's just a few. We have an annual OpCap which is managed by Structures and Grounds. That's $150,000. That's basically replacing equipment in all of the town buildings. Again, pumps, motors, air handlers, things that fail and need to be replaced throughout the year.
Was how much?
$150,000.
Thank you.
And also vehicles. Vehicle replacement is $500,000. We've worked very hard. We've not raised that in the decade that I've been here. We've kind of been very effective at vehicle management, and we've moved our approach for big vehicles to buying used vehicles. we found that after the Blizzard Juno in 2015, that our fleet really couldn't plow us out. It was not robust enough. So we decided to move at that point into these large Oshkosh machines that we could get used for $70,000 that were close to $400,000 new. So that built our ability to deal with snow at a much lesser cost. And now we've moved into other vehicles that we find that are former utility vehicles, like you see Eversource with the bucket trucks. So they take the bucket, that whole back off, and then they rebuild them, and they'll put a dump back on them. And they generally have low miles and saving us a lot of money. So we've been able to, despite the increases in vehicle costs, which has been tremendous, we've been able to keep that line item at $500,000 and replace our fleet as necessary, and to keep it really in good shape. So kudos to our fleet maintenance folks for thinking ahead and thinking outside of the box. But vehicles, as the police chief mentioned, getting very expensive. Even a pickup truck is $75,000 today. And we can't get them. We ordered a 6-wheel dump truck a year and a half ago. It just came in. It's really remarkable how difficult it is to get these vehicles. We've increased our funding for lakes and ponds water sampling. As you may be familiar, we have really dialed up our lakes and ponds management, sampling, restoration over the past few years. And so this just reflects the increase in primarily laboratory work, analysis and sampling at ponds where we've made improvements. And so now we need to increase our level of oversight of those. And we want to increase the number of samples we're taking to have a better baseline of what the water quality is in ponds. So that reflects that. Fuel increases, diesel and gasoline, almost $27,000. Utility increases, $35,000. We have requested $21,000 for traffic signal equipment. This is primarily it's called the Opticom system, which allows emergency services personnel, basically ambulance and rescue, that they can override the light. And I'm sure you've been at a light where this occurs. So they can drive right through in the lane they're on, but those things wear out, and the technology is upgraded. So every year we need to do a number of these. We have almost 30 signalized intersections in town. So we're looking at 21,000 a year to start replacing those, to make sure they're working, so that we can minimize any delays to public safety personnel at our intersections. Portable bathrooms, a number of our beach and recreation areas rely on porta potties, and previously the accessibility committee was providing funding annually to that, and they've chosen not to continue to do that. So that's been brought over to Public Works. So this reflects an increase, and then it also covers the shoulder season porta potties that we put at the beaches when the main restrooms are closed. And I mentioned vehicles and facility operating capital, and that really is just those few changes to the general fund budget for this year. Our biggest challenge right now, it's budget related, but it's personnel. It's finding people to fill the jobs. As you know, unemployment is very low. Since COVID, it's been just tremendous change in the employment picture across the country. And as far as seasonal employees, we pretty much can't hire them. Very difficult. And we're just not competitive with landscapers primarily And that's what our seasonals are, basically doing landscape work. And we just, in this environment where we have unions, right? So it's hard to, from a management perspective, propose to pay people more for seasonal work than full-time employees in the union are getting. And the union doesn't look kindly on that. So that's been very difficult. And we've last summer we had about 30 positions down. Now in previous years when the economy is different, everyone wants to work for the town, right? It's secure employment, is a retirement package, but it does cycle, and so it's affecting our lower paid blue collar workers, boots on the ground, but also relative to our CWMP, it's very difficult to find highly skilled technical positions, engineers, project managers, inspectors. We have a horrible housing market on the Cape, very expensive, and it's very difficult to compete pay-wise with private industry. And even in private industry, they're having a hard time filling jobs. So we're working with intern programs. We've had to basically bring people in and train them up with minimal, having minimal qualifications, basic education. Obviously, if you're an engineer, you have to have an engineering degree, and to be a professional, there's certain requirements. But we're doing the training, and we're bringing people in from other countries. We're really shaking the bushes to try to get personnel, and this was reflected in this year's salary savings. We have currently about $850,000 in savings in our personnel budget, and that's primarily positions we haven't been able to fill. I mentioned the cost of vehicles and the supply chain issues, which affects not only vehicles but generators, pumps, motors. It takes sometimes, particularly generators, a year or more to get a generator for a project. Fuel and utilities have gone up, and then obviously general inflation in the economy, primarily on our materials budgets. So they don't go as far any longer. So not a lot of challenges really. It's just when we're short on personnel, it's hard for us to meet our mission, frankly. So you might see the grass growing longer and longer between cuts, or we don't, we're not weed whacking as much, or getting the weeds, or picking the trash. It's just we don't have the people to do it. And hopefully this year will be better, but so far it's not.
Is it possible to sub those services out to local companies rather than having your own personnel? Has that been discussed at all?
It has. We've looked at that from a variety of angles. It's more costly, and a lot of them are not able to provide the services. They don't have the people either. And you see that with landscapers, with restaurants that aren't open as much. There's just less labor around. Even with the engineers, you can say, well, we could go to engineering firms. They're having problems filling those jobs, which means that they don't get to our work in a timely fashion. We've had horrible problems with consulting engineers over the last couple of years, and architects with getting deliverables out of them. And then the other thing we lose is control, particularly with our CWMP and engineers, is once you're relying on them, it's very difficult to maintain the kind of level of control that we enjoy here, and that we've been able to bring to bear in a very successful program and save the town, frankly, millions of dollars in consulting costs.
Dan, can I ask, are your salaries set outside of your ability to control? Are those set at a state level or something? Do you have no ability to move the salaries? Or
Very little. They're set by union contracts with the collective bargaining agreements. And there are a number of unions in town, and I work with 3. And they have salary scales, and how salary gets increased is very formulaic. When I bring someone on, I have a little leeway with maybe a week or 2 of vacation, or so generally our salaries are over 10 steps. So over 10 years, you get 2% a year, pretty much how it works. If you perform satisfactorily. So I might be able to start someone at a step 3 or step 4, but we're not competitive right now, particularly on our engineering and our technical jobs. With I had an assistant town engineer that left, Nate Collins, and he was probably making $85,000 here. He went and made $200,000 a year.
Wow.
Working from home.
Yeah.
So you know,
can you do anything to be more competitive? What can you do, or what?
Well,
how do you need what?
We're trying. I'm working with Bill Cole and Mark Milne and Mark Ells, trying to figure out and think outside of the box. How do we, can we do, incentive, hiring bonuses, or can we call them different scales? It's very difficult. The union makes it a really hard environment. I don't know if Mark has any thoughts on this, because something that we've dealt with for many years here.
And
but it's a very constricted environment.
Are the other towns as equally challenged? I mean, everybody's in this conundrum with their sewage, and Yarmouth, Falmouth. Are they all in a similar boat as yours?
Well, yes and no. Our town, we're doing it in-house, and we chose to do that for the reasons I mentioned. Okay. Greater control, greater flexibility, more cost savings. So they're relying on consultants on the technical job, but they are having issues with temporary seasonals and the blue collar jobs. What happens is people can shop around, and in Barnstable, our share of healthcare is 50%, plus there's some holidays, so it's more closer to 60%. But in some towns, it's 75% that the town pays. So I've had people leave just over that issue. The hourly pay is the same; they just have gone to another town because it's less for healthcare. And right now we're bargaining with the union. The AFSCME union, which is the boots on the ground folks, and they're looking at all these other towns, and they want to bring in all the information from towns all over the state and say, well, look what they're providing, and it makes it very, very challenging because we have limited budgets. We can't just raise the portion that we're paying for healthcare to 75%. That would be millions of dollars a year. And, we're having a hard time coming up with the millions we need for non-discretionary things. So again, Mark,
no, I know my overall sense is your budget is not big enough. I mean, I'm not part of this committee or anything, but I think you need more money. That's just my sense with what you have on your plate. It's beyond, it's beyond any, you need more money.
Well, yeah, we need people. I mean, we even have the budgets, and if I could get the people, we could keep up. But my fear too is I don't want to burn my people out. I've got engineers; they're working, all the time. They're working at night. They're working on the weekends, and you can only sustain that for so long until it starts to break. So it's
of course,
it's one of my most important things that I'm wrestling with right now is staffing for the mission.
Exactly. Thank you.
That model that you're putting together, Dan, by hiring entry-level engineers and training them in-house, do you think that it will stay? And does that help us decrease our competition with the private industry?
You know, I don't know if they'll stay. I mean, we're at the point where I don't have a choice. So if
yeah, but it's a wonderful, innovative program to be able to do that, you know.
Yeah, and you know, some will stay, some will go, and you know, it's not always money, obviously, and I think you probably all know that there's various reasons people stay in jobs or take jobs, and it's not always money.
Yeah,
it's the quality of the work and the quality of the people and the climate, the employment climate. And, you know, we've tried to in Public Works build from within. We hire from within. You know, people know that we're not going to go over them to go outside, that we train them properly, and that they have a ladder that they can see what it is and where they can go. And, you know, I think when you can take a guy like PJ Kelleher, who runs the highway division, who started as a temporary 20 years ago, he's now the supervisor of the highway division, making 6 figures. That's pretty good. And, you know, I think there's value there.
Yes, I think so. Do you have any final comments on your budget?
I do not. I hope it's supported.
Okay. Do any members of CFAC have any comments or questions of Dan? I see that Gordon and Paul and Betty are here. Do any of the counselors have any questions or comments? I see Gordon shaking his head and I don't see Paul at all, so I don't know what he's thinking.
No, it's been a bit since I've watched you all work, and obviously thank you for your efforts and all this. But we're at budget season now, and I'm always intrigued to hear what Mark is bringing forward, and it's always a pleasure to hear what Dan and the rest of the staff have to say. We're going to be spending some time together on Thursday night, so I think I've set it up already. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, Dan's mission, if you will, is really the heart of the entire town of Barnstable. It's what everybody sees day to day. It's what everybody complains about. I mean, it's everything that we live with. And that's why, you know, anything, so I say, I mean, I would almost like to bump your budget up, but not my call, but he needs everything he can get. And I'm glad you are working with Mark on maybe some strategies to help in the employment area.
Thank you all for your comments. Well, we appreciate DPW. You do the heavy lifting in town. And thank you for taking the time to come, Dan. It's always nice to see you.
Same here. My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you. See you next time.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, we're now moving. We have completed our presentations for the evening. So I'm going to ask Chuck if he has any comments about his subcommittee and their progress and all of that.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think we're making good progress. We have a second draft of the operating budget done. Chris is going to, I think, take what we've learned here tonight and maybe update his sections. Neil has, I think per our last subcommittee meeting, taken one of the charts out of his section that's going to be moved to the general fund section. So Jackie's working on incorporating that chart into her section. I have the rest of the draft kind of updated for format and content based on some of the comments that we made at the last subcommittee meeting. So I think once I get updates from Jackie and Chris with the things I just mentioned, I will send out a new version to the subcommittee sometime in the next few days, hopefully. And you will then have a couple of days to look at it before we meet, I believe, on Monday night, May 1 at 6 o'clock. We agreed we were going to have our second subcommittee meeting. And we will review the draft then, and hopefully with, just some minor tweaks and formatting things, be in a position to share it with the broader CFAC group for review and hopeful approval at the, what would it be, the May 8th meeting, I think.
Right, thank you. I still need to reconfigure the pollution water control, and because we now have a subsection of CWMP. So I believe that Jackie was going to do CWMP. She needs to merely put in a couple of sentences that it's been incorporated into the other budget.
I think, Lillian, that I've done that. I did that as part of the review of the draft.
Oh, good. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at it yet.
Well, I haven't sent it to you, so you wouldn't have any reason to know.
Okay.
But when I send out the next draft, that will be in there. So I don't think Jackie needs to worry about that. You all will most likely have comments about how I've worded it, but what I tried to reflect was the discussion we had in the last meeting. So okay. I think there's at least a placeholder for that. So it's just the other things that I view as the things that will make it a true version 2.0.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do Jackie, Neil, or Chris have any comments about this subcommittee?
I have a question, Lillian.
Sure.
Perhaps for you or Mark, I'm not sure who, but I noticed that when the presentations are made from like the DPW or the police department, it is more about the expenditures. It's not, I don't know if it's just supposed to be about the expenditures, or they never talk about the revenue. So when we put that that information together, is there any revenue that's offsetting the expenditures when we make those proposals?
Yes, there is a proposed budget, and it was sent out. There was a proposed general fund budget for 24. And I believe that it is probably in your download somewhere. And yeah, if you don't have it, I will send it to you.
No, I think you misunderstood the question. I'm saying when the presentations are being made, the presentations are being made about monies that are necessary for the budget. So it's heavy on expenditures. I heard the police chief talk about the grants that he had to offset some of his expenditures, but most of the presentations are all about the expenditures and not any revenues. So I wondered if the presentations were designed that way to exclude the revenues, or it's just something that...
Well, I would just, I'll give you an overview. From my best understanding is that each of these departments puts together their expenses.
Mm-hmm.
The town manager puts together the proposed revenues, because he is still putting together his proposed operating budget.
Okay, so I get it
now. The departments actually don't know how much they're going to get. They know pretty much because I think they meet with the town manager, but I think Mark can address that.
Mark, can I just a quick comment, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but to Jackie's question, to me, this is more like in the corporate world, when we meet with DPW, when we meet with police, they're cost centers. They have costs because they provide services. They do not generate revenues. They are not a top line entity. Their role is to ask for resources so that they can fulfill their mission. But their role is not to comment on revenues and income to the town. That's a wholly separate.
Okay.
It is how I would describe it. It's cost center versus revenue center, and they are not revenue centers.
Yeah, that is correct.
So we're actually just looking at their costs.
Yes, that's correct.
Analyzing their costs. That's
correct.
Okay, got it.
Because they can do that.
you know, we look at revenues, but we don't attribute revenues to departments. The revenues are the revenues, and the departments spend what they spend to fulfill their mandate as charged by the town.
Okay,
And
so
these general fund operating budgets are predominantly financed with your property taxes. That's the revenue source.
okay, so CFAC's responsibility is actually to look at the revenues of these entities and approve them. I'm sorry, the expenditures and approve them. It has nothing to do with the revenues.
This committee does not approve
Right.
department's expenditures. We have no authority to approve an operating budget. We're just commenting on what the departments are proposing for operating budgets going forward.
Okay.
The authority to approve operating budgets resides with the town council.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Okay, does Neil or Chris have any comments?
I think I got the information I need to finish my reports. So
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Chris, I just sent you updated drafts of the police and Department of Public Works general fund operating budgets.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mark, could I get the pollution, water pollution and CWMP, please, so I could put it all together?
Sure.
Thank you.
Chuck, I just sent you today's version of the school section, which is just a tweak different, but I think better. So I hope that doesn't screw up the formatting again.
Neil, I will look at version 174 as soon as I can.
Now, is it still 20 pages?
There it is. Actually,
Okay.
the porting and adding is easy. I think the one thing that as a subcommittee, we tend to use different formats when we put sections together. And when you combine them into a single document, sometimes the formatting gets lost. And so at some point, there's going to need to be a quality control around content, just to make sure we haven't lost anything as things fly back and forth by email. So,
Right, I agree. Okay, so the subcommittee meeting is going to be on May 1st, which is next Monday at 6 p.m. And hopefully we will have the final draft ready for May 8th to be considered by the full CFAC and hopefully approved.
correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any other business to come before the committee tonight? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Whoops, did Paul have a question?
Paul?
Comment?
Madam Chair, just a quick question.
Oh, there you are.
Since the last time I attended, I know there's been some openings. So do you have one person missing right now in CFAC?
We have two who are absent this evening.
Two that are absent, okay.
Yes, we have a total of 7 members.
Okay,
So if you know
great.
anybody else, we would really appreciate.
I just lost you.
Many members, yeah, we're authorized to have 9.
Okay, yes, that's what I thought. So we'll do our best to try to get the word out there for additional help for you as well.
Thank you very much. That would be very helpful.
No worries. Thank you.
So if Betty and Gordon know anybody who would love to deal with the budget, we'd love to have them join CFAC. Thanks so much. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and second to adjourn. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
Well, Lillian?
Yes.
Neil?
Yes.
Jackie?
She's on mute.
Whoops, you're on mute, Jackie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry.
Chris?
Yes.
And Chuck is yes. So we're good to adjourn.
Thank you all.